Remember Karlson, that insane movement shooter from Dani that had everyone hyped? Yeah, that demo broke YouTube, and then nothing. Complete radio silence. As someone who has played moving games like CS2, Crab Game, and Titanfall, the never released Karlson got me pretty disappointed, but today I'm done waiting. I'm straight up building my own version. I made a sick player movement system that requires the player to preserve momentum, special movement mechanics like wall jumping, and added camera effects. However, more on that later. First things first, I added a player and a couple of basic objects, and immediately I realized why creating good player movement is such a challenge. In fact, that's probably the biggest challenge I will encounter during the making of this game, because it involves trigonometry. Yeah, that thing you also dismissed as utterly useless at school and thought it had no real world use cases is suddenly needed more than ever. I had to solve actual geometry problems to get the movement right, so there's that. Anyway, I now have the code which allowed the player to run, jump, and slide. However, it wasn't perfect, and wasn't even remotely close to completion by any means. When dropping on the slope from high up, you'd expect your character to be first dragged downwards, and then once they reach the ground, accelerated once again forward with an even greater speed. Alright, should be good, and let's test my game to see if I did everything correctly, and oh no. This is where this page came in clutch. I literally spent days fixing this roadblock, pun intended. I had to derive a formula to calculate the resulting vector when the player has just hit the ground. But in the end it was all worth it because I got it. It takes the previous velocity, does some funky trigonometry calculations, and gives me the result. Crazy explanation, I know. I plugged it into the game's code and would you look at that. It worked flawless. Oh well. Turns out the game engine I was using, Redo, didn't account for such instances where a player could be sliding but also going up, thus the player would just get stuck. I worked around this issue by basically moving the player 0.01 meters up right before hitting the next slope, and while it did work sometimes, it became clear that the player would often simply get stuck once again. More often than not, adding a stupid fix on top of another stupid fix won't work in programming, especially when I'm involved in the project. But here, I thought maybe adding just a tiny bit more space between the player and the floor would solve the issue. And surprisingly, it did, although a freaking new one appeared. Since I increased the height by which the player goes up, now the camera goes up and down like crazy if crouched. I hope it's pretty clear why that was an issue. So to recap, my code introduced a landing from a slope bug, which introduced an issue with going up a slope, which in turn transformed my game into an earthquake simulator. I was cooked, and at this point I really wanted to give up, because solving endless glitches in the slope movement, bug after endless bug, and here comes a shocker, I didn't enjoy it. But you know what they say?
Never back down, never what?
Never give up!
That's right!
I scrapped the entire slope related movements, making my previous week's progress worthless, and decided not to add sliding. Not in the sense that the game itself won't have any sliding mechanics, but rather the game engine won't think the player is sliding. All I needed was to remove friction and apply a force parallel to the surface so the player accelerates downwards. That's all sliding really is. That way the player is still on the ground, according to the engine, accelerates downwards, and makes you look cool as heck. This solution immediately solved pretty much every single bug in the game, and at the time, it was a big relief for me. Having that out of the way, now it was a good time to add some special effects to the game. After all, you want to have your clips look fun. I started with camera tilts when sliding, then added all sorts of camera shakes like jumping, mid-air, landing. I also added these cool particle effects right beneath the player, so when they slide, they feel like they're in some action movie. Then build a prototype level to test out all new effects, and here's how it looks so far. Looks great. However, I thought I could make it better. I added motion blur so everything on your screen gets blurred. No, just kidding. It's not that strong and it's barely even noticeable. Along the way, I learned that most games with extreme player speeds reduce motion blur near the center of the screen, so players don't get motion sick. So I implemented that as well. Added a new post-process effect called Bloom, wall jumping, which wasn't hard to add, unlike the next thing on the list, destruction. Every gamer loves seeing things explode, and that's why I added this useless wall that serves zero purpose and it should... Jokes aside, it shatters into pieces thanks to a plugin some random dude wrote online. And I'm gonna use his work for my own purposes, I'm sure he doesn't mind. Some more particle effects and it looked insane. I added a sound for breaking a wall, as well as all other sounds for all actions. Here, take a listen. And yeah, that's the current state of the game. I'll make the game free to download on Steam so anybody can play it. Just so much is planned, like weapons, enemies, better maps. I even want to make a level editor. Although, that's all for another video. Thanks for watching. See ya.